Welcome to Messy Liberation, the podcast that dives deep into feminism, business, and personal growth. I'm Becky Mollenkamp.
And I'm Taina Brown. Get ready for another messy conversation through the eyes of two intersectional feminist coaches.
Let's get messy. Hello.
Hi.
We're back.
We're back.
Just you and me. We were going to have a guest. They had to postpone, so that will be coming soon. Instead, today it'll be just you and I. And we were thinking, one, because so many folks have checked out our video from a couple weeks ago about, or our episode a few weeks ago about micro actions or small actions of resistance and how to sort of fight back. And two, just because there are some things that we've been doing that are different or that we haven't talked about or that we want to revisit, we thought maybe we would do that. And also because the world feels on fire. It always does, but I swear to you, it feels like it just keeps feeling, because things keep stacking on top of each other, where every time I'm like, no, this feels like as bad as it could get.
Yeah.
Sadly,
every time you think you can't get worse,
then someone else gets illegally deported or disappeared or a million other things that are happening. I don't want to focus on all the negative because I think there's enough of that. I don't know what you think, but I feel like there's enough of that. There's enough people talking about it, responding to it. But we could, one thing I think is we could first share, this is not something I told you beforehand, so if you don't want, you don't have to, but I would like to share at least a couple of the places I go when I want to actually stay up to date on what's happening.
That's good.
Without overwhelm. Because here's one thing I will say. One of the ways I'm protecting myself is I'm doing far less social media. I'm down to pretty much the only place I go is Blue Sky. I don't look at Instagram. I really don't look at TikTok. YouTube, I'm only using to produce content, but not really look at content. So for me, the only place I really go is Blue Sky. I prefer written words, so that's why. And I don't want to be on Threads or that other site anymore. And even there, I find it overwhelming because it's just one political story after another, and it's too much. So I really stopped checking a lot of social media, and instead I'm using podcasts a lot for myself. And I guess some combination of YouTube, because sometimes I'll watch the live streams of some of these during the day. So for me, I really like Bulwark, even though I know they are a bunch of former Republicans and there may be people who come at me for that. I find it reassuring in a way because these people who consider themselves more conservative and have left the Republican Party because of Trump, when they're saying the world's on fire, it makes me feel a little less like, oh, it's just the people on the fringes that are thinking this way. Because sometimes when I'm too in tune with only left-wing things, I think maybe this isn't how everyone feels. And so Bulwark has been helpful for me in feeling like, okay, if the former Republicans who would by Republican standards are liberal, but in the old days were conservatives, if they're thinking things are cuckoo bananas haywire, then I'm not alone. This is real. And so I love that as a source. I watch Tim Miller, who I like and sometimes don't, and Sarah Longwell, who I mostly don't like and sometimes do. And then JV, I can't remember his name. Sorry, JV. But anyway, those three on there are pretty great for me. And also what I like is that they have the Bulwark hot takes or Bulwark takes or Bulwark short, something like that on podcasts. And it's little 10 to 15 minute snippets on a specific thing. So I can go and be like, okay, I'm curious about this thing, and just listen to those. And it's not like a 2-hour podcast about everything or all the stuff. So I highly recommend that. I sometimes listen to Minority Report, but I'll be honest, those are so long that sometimes, and the same for David Pakman and Midas Touch, although I listen to that less now that I've learned a little more about their folks and that maybe they're a little bit grifty. But those are all a lot longer. So I've been really leaning on Bulwark, the takes, and just doing short things on specific issues that are happening so that I feel like I have at least a cursory knowledge of what's going on, but also I'm not diving in so deep that I'm inundating myself with the news. So that's kind of my spot. Where do you go when you want to just say, I want to know what's happening, but I don't want to be overwhelmed? Nowhere?
Nowhere.
That's okay.
I'm on social media a lot.
Okay, so you're getting it there.
So I'm getting a lot of just quick sound bites from social media, but it is beginning to become overwhelming for me. So I am in the beginning stages of trying to figure out how to manage that. And then my wife likes to watch the news in the mornings.
Well, that's right. She's
a CBS girl. Yeah. So every morning it's CBS mornings plus local news. I think I prefer the local news more than the general news just because it's things that are more related to like how it'll affect our day to day. But even then, I try not to watch it too much. So if
Yeah.
she has it on, well, first of all, she gets up much earlier than I do. But if I happen to be up and it's on, I'll usually will be reading or something while the news is on. So I'm not like too focused in on it. Also, I'm
Yeah.
not quite awake yet. Like I'm still working through my coffee. So I'm
And
like
that's not the
hearing
shit you
every
want
other
when you're not
word.
awake. Yeah, you don't do
Exactly.
not take on news without caffeine. That is just a generally good warning for people.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're a coffee drinker, definitely don't. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with like my news intake
I
these
used to be a
days.
news junkie. I mean, I watched MSNBC hours a day in the past. I used to
Mm-hmm.
watch evening news every night with Lester Holt, and followed by my local evening news on the
Lester.
NBC. I know, and all of that I have stopped since the election, and then I've been reducing all of my political commentary and social media intake really since inauguration. So now I'm down to truly. I usually do maybe three of those bulwark takes, like maybe 30 minutes or 45 minutes at most
Mm-hmm.
a day, where I feel like I get more than just the like headline and I get some more contextual knowledge because I
Yeah.
do love that, but I'm not overwhelming myself. So I feel
Yeah.
like my first little tip for people who are trying to think about how do I handle what's going on in the world right now is like reduce your consumption of news. Figure out one or two sources that you really trust and like, and just turn to them. And how can you do it in the least amount possible? The other thing I didn't mention is I do watch Channel 4 News, meaning Channel 4 from Britain. And that I do that a couple of times a
Mm.
week, maybe, or once a week, maybe. And I love that. I highly recommend turning to international news sources right now, especially
Yeah.
whether that's Canadian news sources or British news sources or other European news sources or anywhere really, because almost all of them are going to give you a more sober-eyed view,
Contextualized.
yes, and sober view of what's happening. And that is another place that helps me feel better when I see how Europe is responding to America. It's like, okay, they know, like they get it, and
Yeah.
things are bad. Okay, so that's my first thing. Secondly, I wanted to talk about the body, and
The
I think you'll love this
body.
because you're a somatic coach. The other thing I'm noticing this year is my body is telling me, and I'm not alone in this, every person I'm talking to is having the same thing
Yeah.
around noticing how their body is like reacting, like physical manifestations of all of the stress that we're under. And I have definitely been having that of noticing that my body is just, I mean, I'm going through perimenopause, so that's a big part of it. But I
Mm-hmm.
think my symptoms are far more exaggerated. And, I've had some depression and things like that. I'm dealing with vertigo the last 2 days, which is related to perimenopause, but also related to stress. So I think all of these things,
Mm.
like we need to listen to our body. And I
Yeah.
am using this year as an opportunity to visit my healthcare providers more often. I'm privileged enough to have insurance. So people who don't, I understand that that is a privilege. It shouldn't be. It should be a right, not a privilege. But in the world we live in now, it's a privilege. But if you also share that privilege to have access to healthcare, I think it's a great idea to revisit some of your healthcare providers and just have honest conversations with them, as honest as you feel you can be. I
Yeah.
also know there's some challenge there because of concerns around privacy and things, but to try and get some assistance, disregard that pain that you're having or that weird feeling or that like even that nagging feeling that
Mm-hmm.
maybe something's going on. Our bodies do speak to us when we're under stress. And I think that we need to pay attention to that and seek care and help for those things now as much as ever,
Yeah.
but even more so. So that's
Yeah.
one piece for me. I don't know about how you
Yeah.
feel about that as a
Yeah.
somatic
Yeah. No,
practitioner.
I agree. If you do have the privilege to be able to go see a healthcare provider, take full advantage of that. As long as it's within your capacity and your means to do so. Yeah, I have definitely noticed changes in the way that my body is responding to the stressors. So, feeling a lot more generalized pain, which is part of having fibromyalgia. But for the most part, it was pretty under control because I've been on medication for it for years. But lately, it's like not. And so what that does is it creates like exhaustion and brain fog, right? And so it creates this homeostasis of just like not really being able to function at 100%, both physically and cognitively. And so it's been really challenging the past several months to just kind of just get things done. And I'm having to rekindle gauge what a consistent pace looks like for me, right? So before it might have been, you know, maybe 4 hours of work every day or 5 hours of work every day. But now it feels like it's like half that. And so I'm now having to like reprioritize and refigure things out, and things are like slipping through the cracks more often. And so I've been trying to lean into some of those somatic practices more. So the good thing or the silver lining is that like it's peak gardening season. So, because it's spring, right? And so
Your
spending,
therapy.
yeah, free therapy. So I've literally been going outside to touch grass, which has helped to just kind of feel more stabilized and grounded. And I think when we're really stressed out because of all the ambiguity that's happening, everything feels destabilized. And what's going to help is anything that helps you feel grounded, right? So whether that's gardening, whether that's yoga, whether it's, going to the park, whether it's, visualization exercise, right? Like you can just like sit at home and just like visualize your feet just kind of getting rooted into the ground for a few minutes. You can also, there's a tree right outside my window that I'm looking at now. And so just like letting my eyes rest on that tree, or listening to the birds or the fucking squirrels that keep going through my garden beds looking for seeds, but just like any kind of connection to nature helps us to reorient and helps us to regulate our nervous system and feel like more rooted and grounded. And so I'm trying to do that in like bits and pieces. And the interesting thing is like, I've never had, for the most part, I've never had trouble like really tapping into that, but it's a struggle lately. Like lately it's like I know that that's what I should be doing, but like there's a part of me that's like, what's the point?
Oh my God. Everyone, I know so many people feeling that way. It's like the things that we know will help us the most are the hardest for some reason to access when we are not in a good place, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're in a great place, it's really easy to do the things.
Yeah.
To do the movement, to eat the nutritious foods, to do whatever the things are that to get more sleep. And then when you need it the most, it's the most difficult to do. And that is so normal. So I think it's good to normalize that as well. And I think that's kind of like another thing is having more grace with selves to think about, like, can I just allow myself to see that this is challenging?
Yeah.
Instead of, I guess for me, grace in some ways is like, can I reduce expectations on myself? Like, can I stop expecting that it should look different? Because as soon as
be easy.
Yeah, that it's supposed to be easy, that I should be able to do this, or comparing myself to some former version of myself.
Yeah.
That's not the person that's showing up right now. That's not the person I am today. The person I was pre-Trump isn't this person, because this is not that time, right? Like we have to be honest with ourselves and give ourselves that grace to say, I can let go of those expectations. Because I find often for me and a lot of people, like my clients, I'm sure you see too, is the expectation is the problem more than anything. And once we can free ourselves from the expectation, often we can get back into action, because the action could look very different. It doesn't have to look like getting 20 things done today. It could be like, can I do one thing today?
Yeah.
Normally, when we think we've got 20 things and our expectation is all 20 have to get done, one doesn't even feel good. So we say, why bother doing any? Right? One is as bad as zero. If you can free yourself from the expectation and say, if I do anything today, even if I do nothing today, I'm still worthy. I'm still amazing. I still love myself. At the end of this day, I'm going to love myself no matter what. Then it's like, okay, if I get one thing done, that's amazing and it feels great. But even if I don't, it's okay. But it's a very different way of looking at the tasks ahead of you and your days and your time than when we go into it with all these expectations that we put on ourselves. And so that is so much easier said than done. And I know that, right? Because capitalism makes us want to be these machines. But I do think right now, wherever you can, and again, a lot of that relates to privilege, wherever you can, giving yourself permission to release expectations around productivity, really expectations around anything.
Yeah.
Just be like, can I just be okay with just me surviving today? And then it's like, at minimum, can I at least say, I'm okay with just doing the things I absolutely must do to survive?
Yeah.
Whatever those look like for you. And based on privilege, those probably look different for different people.
Yeah.
But I think that that's really, really helpful and really, really hard.
Yeah, it is. It brings me back to the book by Casey Davis.
The struggle
care psychologist, How to Keep House While Drowning. And so, in her concept of like breaking down tasks so they're more manageable. So, like if you say I have to do laundry, well, laundry is actually a series of tasks. It's not one task. And so, breaking it down so that way you don't have to do all the laundry task in one day, right? Like maybe the first task is just getting the laundry bin to the laundry room,
Or
right?
collecting all of the laundry from all the different rooms if you have
Yeah,
more than one person,
yeah,
right? And just getting it
yeah,
in one space,
yeah.
right?
And
Then
so you're,
sorting and then, yeah,
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 absolutely. And so then you're making this like incremental progress. So that
yeah.
way it feels less overwhelming, but you don't feel like you're stuck doing nothing. And so that's kind of the approach that I usually fall back on when I do start to feel overwhelmed about a task, or when I start to feel like, what's the point? It's like, okay, this is one thing, but like what are the little steps to make this happen?
Well, the other big thing that she talks about that I love, and I know she's not the only one, but and probably wasn't the first one, but this is where I learned the concept, was the idea of eliminating moral judgment on things that are not about morality. The
Yeah.
ways that we attach all this moral judgment to having a clean home, right? Cleanliness is somehow more moral than not being
Yeah.
clean, or being organized is more moral than not, or being more productive is more moral than not. Like the way we make it a morality assessment, and we do it to ourselves and others. And I really think part of it is then, can I start to practice it by releasing it for others? Because if we're still doing it with others, we're not going to be able to do it for self.
Right.
For some people, it works the other way. It's better when they can release it for themselves and then they're able to release it for others. So I think test it for yourself and see what works. But I know for me, it becomes easier when I start to be able to stop doing, like if I can stop judging other women on how they look, then I eventually get to the place where it becomes this real cognitive dissonance where I'm like, well, how do I keep doing that for myself? I'm saying to all these other women, I think that they're beautiful exactly as they are, and I mean it. Well, why can't I do that for me? And it becomes more challenging when you have that kind of cognitive dissonance. So finding that for you, whether it's releasing it for yourself so that you can do it for others, or for others, and then eventually it comes back to yourself. But I think, like, who says that we need to have all our laundry clean all the time?
Yeah.
Who says it's wrong to have piles of laundry?
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. There's only like one time a week where you have no piles of laundry, or one moment in time when you've just finished the laundry. And even then, unless you're naked doing your laundry, the clothes you have on are now dirty laundry, right? So like, there's no way to not have dirty laundry. So I think we need to like just allow ourselves to say, what do I need to survive? If that's where you're at, then it's like, what do I need to survive? And maybe that just means this week I just need to do a minimum of like some pajamas and like a few pairs of underwear, and then I'll be okay for X number of days. Like one load. And I don't have to separate, and I don't have to do all that. Like I'm just going to allow myself
store
to
it
just
all together.
I never separate, and guess what? My clothes are all fine. I just make sure I buy clothes that can be washed that way. I don't dry clean. I don't separate. I don't do any of that stuff. So yeah, like what is the minimum you need? And like a clean house, would it be wonderful to have a clean house because it feels so great? Of course. Is it always possible in the reality of the way you live, who's with you in your home, the time you have, the capacity you have, your energy levels? Like, no. So what is the bare minimum to be able to survive? Maybe what you need right now is just to be able to have a path that allows you to get to the places that you need to be in the home to function. And can you do that and then release the judgment and the expectation that it needs to be different until your capacity changes? This stuff is like really hard to do, but I think it's so much of the morality that we attach to stuff that it creates the shame. And that's what keeps us in that place, like that stuck, paralyzed kind of place.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. One thing I picked back up also to just kind of help give me some focus and some grounding.
Adrienne Marie Brown?
Huh?
Adrienne Marie Brown? Okay.
No, my sourdough starter. Yeah.
Nice.
And so I had put it up for, a few years now, actually. And I picked it back up about a month ago. And I'm still not to the point where I'm like super consistent with like the feedings and like managing it, but I'm like doing what I can. And so having something that I can like get, it's the same as like gardening for me, like having something I can dig my hands into that's like tangible, that produces something delicious after. Like it just feels really good to be able to do that, to like create something from scratch.
Those can be nice hobbies, the kind of thing that actually like you have something at the end, a tangible thing. That can always feel really nice for a lot of people anyway.
Yeah. And so right now I'm trying to manage how much I'm feeding it, because it does get quite expensive because you have to use a lot of flour. So
I'll tell you what, the way I hear people talk about sourdough starters, it's like having another goddamn kid. And I'm telling you, that's not for me, but I'm glad you enjoy it. I already I already have enough responsibility. I don't need this like organic matter yelling at me too.
Feed me, feed
Right.
me.
But I love that you love it.
Yeah. So that's, and it's also something that's just like, it's just pleasurable. Like it's a pleasure. It's a joy. It's a little bright spot in an otherwise sometimes really dark day. So I'm
Well, and I
enjoying
wonder
that.
too, like with gardening and your sourdough starter and those kinds of things, I wonder if part of the feeling, because this is something I've been speaking with a lot of my clients lately who are women, especially, who are feeling the same overwhelming stuff, is this feeling of disconnection from self. Like, especially when you're a parent, but even if you're not, like just with all the responsibilities that we all have and the weight of the world and everything else going on, it's so easy to lose that sense of like, oh, that's right, there's Becky. Like she's still here, right? Like, and I wonder, I think sometimes it's finding those things. For some people, it's like, can I just get back out in nature, clear all the noise so I can be there with my own mind, or an activity that I used to love that brings back that feeling of here I am. But figuring out things, I think it can be hard because we feel like with everything going on every minute, like especially when there's economy troubles, like you start to think every minute needs to be put towards trying to find something that pays the bills or doing things that pay the bills. And when things feel really heavy and awful, it feels like there can be some guilt that comes up of like, who am I to be going and enjoying myself when there's all of this pain happening to everyone else? Or I need to always be like the activist part of us. I always be fighting and doing something to change things. But we have to sustain ourselves. And I think part of that is remembering who the hell you are, which can be really, really hard to do.
Yeah, it can. It can. I was thinking about that earlier today, actually, while I was cleaning up my dog's mess. And because we went to see the movie Sinners last night.
How was it?
It's good. It's an experience for sure. Like I'm still mentally and emotionally unpacking and processing. Yeah. But
maybe we can talk about it later if I see it or something. I don't like horror, so I don't know if I'll see it, but anyway.
It's not really horror. I wouldn't classify it as horror.
I feel like that's what it's been classified as. But
it definitely fits into that genre based on, the story and all of that. It's not the same as like watching it.
But is it real scary?
There's some jump scares for sure.
Okay. Well, I'll think about it. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. But no, I was thinking about that because I don't want to
don't give
spoilers out there. Yeah.
It's still too soon.
I'm going to try my best not to throw any spoilers out there. I'm going to try to be really intentional here with my language. Do you know, what do you know about the movie?
I know more about the story of Ryan Coogler and his massive, like, the way he protected his IP rights in all of this. I don't know if you've heard that part, but and I'm like massive Hugo vibes around that of like sticking it to the man and protecting creatives. That piece I know. As far as the story itself, I just know there's twins. And and I know there's some stuff around like white passing or something that I've read a little bit about. Okay. But beyond that, I don't know much and I don't really want to know too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will say music is a really big theme in the movie. Music. And it takes place during the time of Jim Crow. So there's sharecroppers.
I did know that too, yeah.
Yeah, and when blues music is really like big.
Which is funny because we just talked about
We did just talk about it. And so one of the things that I walked away with from watching the movie last night was that there's this insidious way that oppression, like systemic institutionalized oppression, whether it's racism or fascism, authoritarianism, right? All the isms, right? That it's all the isms, their main purpose is to take, right? To consume.
Correct. Yeah.
To consume from us as much as possible, right? They want to take everything from us. And the one thing or one of the things that they cannot take from us is our ability to like laugh. Our ability to enjoy life, our ability to take pleasure in things. And so I feel like that was a really big theme in the movie. And I was thinking about it this morning because I was thinking about how like, I don't know if it was yesterday or earlier this week where they were talking about how like Caroline Levitt just kind of like lost it over Amazon's thing about like posting the differences in price based on tariffs. And they were like, this is like, I don't know what, and I was thinking about the conversation that we had on an episode a few weeks ago about how like being someone like her or someone who believes, right, what they believe, like has to be a really miserable existence when you live that small. Like you're just fucking angry all the time. Like there's no joy there at
I
all.
could say the same. Be careful here, Becky, because I don't mean the same, but I can
Mm-hmm.
also see where the argument is similar to people on either end of those
Yeah.
extremes. So the same for people who spend the entirety of their days just hating everyone on the right and being angry about everything all the time also, right? So like, yeah,
Yeah,
I
no, and
agree
that's
with you.
where I'm going. That's
Yeah.
where I'm going with this, right? Like, I think that is one of the defining differences I think that we really have to lean into as people who are trying to resist, right? This kind of authoritarianism, this kind of overconsumption of our lives. One of the ways that we can resist that is by remaining joyful, right? Holding on to the ways that we can enjoy life, that we can engage in pleasure. And I know we say that all the time, but it bears repeating. It's one of those things we have to say all the time because we need to remind ourselves, because if it's not anger and frustration, it's sadness and despair, right? That we're contending with. And we have to throw joy and pleasure into that mix as well in order to balance things out and sustain us for the long run, because otherwise we're going to become just like them. We're just going to be
Right.
these miserable people leading these miserable lives with no sense of vision, of no sense of like imagination, no sense of what comes after, right? Because we're just going to be stuck in this moment of just like fight or flight mode.
Yeah. Well, and we have this one short and precious life. And how do we want to use it? And that is not to say that you need to toxic positive your
Yeah,
way
for
out of
sure.
it. Right. And there's a difference between toxic positivity and self-care, self-preservation, being able to stay in the fight, and joy and pleasure are part of that. We have to have joy and pleasure. And next week, I'm premiering next the 13th. So next Tuesday, I'm premiering my new podcast all by myself called Assigned Reading. I know, Taina, I'm cheating on you. My third podcast, which I don't
I'm
need to be
not
doing.
rolling my eyes.
I know. Well, you're going to be a guest. And yes, I know I don't need to add more to my plate. However, that is part of my joy. Like it's the kind of these conversations that we have bring me immense joy, and getting to have more of those conversations with more people brings me even more joy, right? Like I want to multiply all of that because it's what feeds me and sustains me. It's my type as a big nerd. I love talking about big issues. I abhor small talk, but I could talk about deep shit all day long. And like it fills me. I feel more energized afterwards or during and afterwards. So next week, one of the first episodes that's coming out is with Jordan Maney talking about an essay called
Jordan.
Joy. Yeah. An essay.
Jordan.
Talking about an essay called Joy by Zadie Smith. And it's really a beautiful conversation and that reminder about the light that we need to find in these hard times, because it's what helps to sustain us, and that it is an act of activism and rebellion and resistance to do that. And when you were talking about that movie, I haven't seen it, but I will draw a parallel sort of to a movie, one of the few movies. I'm not a crier at movies generally. I'm not emotional at things that aren't real. However, Life is Beautiful, if you remember that movie from long ago, so maybe you're too young, I don't know. But it was about the Holocaust, and it was exactly that similar sentiment of finding joy even in our darkest hours, and that they can take everything, but they can't force that out of us, right? Even when they try, we have this human capacity, if we look for it hard enough, to find light, to find joy, to create pleasure, to create joy. And it is gut wrenching, but beautiful. And there are people, and I can understand a valid argument where someone could say that is a really toxically positive message about something so horrendous. And I can also understand and see that and be with that message. And also say exactly what you said, which is, but it's also an act of rebellion, of defiance, of resistance, and of saying, no, this is what the human spirit is about. And we can't let them take it. Even when we know we're being marched to the end, like we can't let them take that from us, because that's when they really win. That's what they want to do. They want to crush us, right? And so how do we resist that? And it makes me think, like I went to that protest on April, whatever it was, 5th, 6th, the big ones across the country. And it was, we're fighting. We're all out there with signs and angry about what's happening. But what happened in the community and the spirit of all these people who gathered together was not negative. It wasn't, there was nobody pumping their fists with anger or whatever. It was joy. It was these people coming together to say, care about each other. We care about humanity. We care about people. We care about love. We're all here to show up and let you know that in a joyous way. There was music. There were people, ringing bells. There was people screaming like with delight and people honking in support and everyone cheering. And that was so, so good for me at a time I really needed it. So if you're like in that depths of despair part, which is very valid and real, finding some joy is like really a powerful antidote.
Yeah. 100% agree. They definitely want us broken. They want us struggling. They want us desperate, right? Brokenness creates desperation. And not that what a lot of people are facing now isn't a means or isn't enough to make people desperate. It definitely is, but that's not the only thing we should be, right?
Both and. Speak to the both and.
Yeah, both and. I think when people make the argument that frivolous joy, quote unquote frivolous joy or pleasure is useless or doesn't have a place in resistance, that's a very limited viewpoint, and it constricts how much we're capable of, right? Because what you're really saying is we are only capable of hating. We're only capable of fighting in this moment. We don't have the capability to laugh until tears roll down our face. We don't have the capability to have some of the best orgasms we've ever had while we're fighting and resisting, right? And that's not the case. Like, we are complex human beings. We have the capability to hold all of that. And it goes back to that conversation that we had a few weeks ago about that sense of expansiveness. And that's what true abundance looks like, being able to hold all of that within ourselves, right? In a way that helps us realize like who we are in the moment, and will also sustain us to become who we will become after the moment is done. And so I think and yes, there is such a thing as toxic positivity. The toxic positivity is basically, it's gaslighting, right? It's saying what's happening is not as bad as it is. We'll get through it. We'll be fine, right? It's trying to sweep things under the rug.
Denying reality.
Denying reality. It's trying to make light of what's happening. And that's definitely not what we're doing here. Like, we're not making light of what's happening at all. Like, the issues are real. Like, it's fucking terrifying out there. Every day I'm like, are we going to wake up tomorrow and the world is going to like literally be on fire? Like, it feels like that now, but what happens when the world literally is on fire, right? When the fire department is not working and cops, however awful they are, right, are not working. And it's like basically Walking Dead, right? Level type shit out there, like I wake up every day thinking about that. When is that day going to be here that I wake up and it's like literally every person for themselves? It is fucking terrifying out there. I get it. But also, some of my flowers are popping off in my garden, and I'm not going to ignore that. Like, I'm going to pick some of those flowers and put them in a little vase so I can look at them every day, and I'm going to water them so that they can produce more flowers. Like, I'm going to tend to my shit, because what else is there?
And you and your partner are going to hug and kiss and make love, and you're going to watch shows that make you laugh, and you're going to have conversations with people you care about, because also that's about building community.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to build community when you are living in a hole, right? A self-created hole that and I say this as somebody who spent months in one earlier in this year of like, and still often feel that pull to like, I just want to cocoon and hide from everything, right? But it's hard to build and sustain community when you're like that. And when the shit hits the fan and you need community, we need, that's something we have to be fostering over time so that we are there for you. And it's funny you mentioned Walking Dead, because I just spent the weekend watching the entirety of it because I had never seen it.
The entirety of it?
I fast forward through a lot of the zombie stuff. And truth be told, it's not my favorite show, but I watch it because I love Pedro Pascal and I'll watch anything he's in, and he didn't disappoint. But
wait, are you talking about The Walking Dead or The Last of Us?
Sorry, I meant The Last of Us. I said Walking Dead.
That's why I was like, the entirety of it?
No, Last of Us. It's much shorter, I suppose. Yeah, no. Sorry, I've never seen Walking Dead either. I'm not a big zombie person. And I gotta tell you, The Last of Us zombies it made me laugh. I'm like, these are so stupid. But anyway, that's the point. Point is, literal like end of the world crazy shit. It's as bad as it can be, right?
Yeah.
And yet I thought it was important that they did show these moments where there's community. So much of it is like the survival is about community.
Yeah.
Whether it's a community of two, Pedro and what's her face, Bella, or community where there's like entire towns that have been forging to like people working together to create safe havens. And even within those communities, there's still moments of joy. Right? Yeah. They show that there is like the whole world's burning around you and it's terrifying. And yet life goes on. People are having babies. People are falling in love. They're, having moments of like watching a movie and things like that, because otherwise what? What? Yeah. We sit and we cry until it's over. What life was that? What life was that? So I love that you mentioned it, because it just totally made me think of that. And it's like, we still have to find the joy, because it's the only way we have community. Like community, yes, we find community in sorrow, for sure. That's what funerals and things like that are about. But those things happen after so many times of spending joyous moments together. I feel like community is forged out of joy and strengthened out of sorrow, right? Like we find our community through all of the great times we have together, and then we turn to it when we need them, when things are feeling impossible.
Yeah, joy is the foundation.
Yeah.
The foundation. And then once you have that, then the structures for support, for grief, for mutual aid, things like that, like it's easy to build. Like you can't build up those structures if there's no foundation.
Yeah.
What's giving you joy lately? I have a specific story I want to share. It's really quick, but
you share yours then, because I'll have to think about what's bringing me joy.
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned this on a podcast before, but I definitely have mentioned it to you. Like I've just been down like a fanfic rabbit hole.
Oh my God, have you ever?
That's really been bringing me a lot of joy lately.
And a lot of sleepless nights.
Yes. So I'm doing better. I'm not staying up as late reading, being a little bit more disciplined with myself. But I was up a little late the other night reading in bed, and Mello was sleeping. And she sleep talks sometimes, not as much as she used to.
Kid does that, and it's the cutest thing. I love sleepwalkers.
Yeah.
But then most of the time, at least with my kid, I can't actually understand it. It's just like and then you're like, I always going like, what'd you say? What's that? Hoping they'll repeat it, because I'm so desperate to know what they're saying, but it usually doesn't work. But I love it when it's something I can actually understand.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
She does some of the mumbling. Usually it's very clear though. It is usually very clear. So because it's clear, sometimes I'm not sure if she's awake or if she's sleep talking, but I can usually tell when it's because of actually I was going to say I can usually tell because it's something ridiculous, but even when she's awake, sometimes she says really goofy, ridiculous things. But anyway, so the other night I'm reading one of my Hermione fanfics, and it's probably like 12:30 in the morning. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to finish this chapter. I'm going to go to bed. And then like, she leans over to me and she goes, if you don't go to sleep in the next 10 minutes, you're gay. It just like rolls back over. And goes,
did you say, I don't think it's going to matter?
And I was like, did she really just say that to me? And so then I was like, wait, is she awake? Or like, is she awake and like teasing me? Or because one of the things that she always does when she is awake, that she teases me when we're around other people, she's like, oh, well, Ty's not gay. She's pansexual. She loves bread, like that's like one of her favorite jokes. So then I was like, is she just like making fun of me? But no, she was dead asleep. And, I asked her about it the next day and she was like, I said that. I was like, yeah, you did. You did. So now it's like this joke.
Right. If you don't clean the house, you're gay.
Yeah. She's like, if you don't do this, you're gay. I'm like, okay. So I'm gay.
And just for any listeners who are not a part of the queer community, that's not a joke to use amongst your friends.
Yeah.
But that is funny. And I'm sure that brings you joy.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say two things that are bringing me joy. One, again, assigned reading, my new podcast that's coming. Not just because of self-promotion, but I just recorded one with Paige Worthy today. Sometimes you go into something like I'm having some vertigo. I'm freaking just lots of perimenopausal issues in the last few days that are not making me a happy camper. I keep texting my husband all day. I hate everyone and everything right now. And so I was like, you go into something, you're like, I don't really want to do this. And it's amazing to me how that goes away so quickly when I get into these conversations, because it's about stuff that I give a shit about, I'm excited about, and I get lost in it. And I'm like, by the end of it, I'm like, oh my God, that was I didn't even think I was going to want to do this. And it was just so great. And it feels so good. So that's definitely bringing joy. And the other thing is, the first part of this isn't, but the second part is, there's lice in my son's school. So that's not bringing me joy. But I kept him home today because of said lice, because I don't want to risk it, even though I can't keep him out for the rest of the year. I don't know what I'm going to do. But today, when I found out it was not just in his school, but in his grade, and they're all those classes are, and they do all their recess together and everything. I only know of a girl right now who has it, but it'll spread. So I was just like, you know what? Let's just stay home today.
Yeah.
So he's been home, and I've been making him do an hour on screen, an hour off. And so he'll do reading or whatever. And he was just outside using his scooter, and it just brings me such joy how he'll he wanted to do something and then he'd look back to see if I was watching. He'll blow me a little kiss when he sees I'm watching, or give me a thumbs up, and he'll come back and be like, Mom, look at this, or watch this. And part of me is like, because he's been also asking for snuggles all day, which, I mean, come on, he's not going to want that much longer. But there's this part of me that's like, I got to work, leave me alone. But I'm trying really hard to tap into the part that's like, I don't have much more time with this before it's like, oh my God, Mom, and nonstop eye rolls and leave me alone. And so today has been pretty, even though so much feels shitty about my body, it's been really joyous getting to just remember I have a great kid, and I'm so lucky, and he's so sweet, and I get to do these great things, even if they don't pay necessarily, that I love, and that I have those outlets for expression and creativity. I think those are things too, along the lines of the gardening or whatever, because it can look different for everyone. And I don't like gardening. I am working on my rock painting, because that's my little hobby I'm trying to take up. And I am trying to do more walking outside, and that does feel good when the weather's nice. But honestly, for me, some of what actually fills my bucket is deep conversations, which for a lot of people may not look like I'm doing self-care. Recording a podcast may seem like work, but the truth is, we aren't getting paid for this podcast. Yeah. I'm not getting paid for the other podcast. And so far, I don't think it's led to anything that does pay. And I don't care, because it is, for me, it's what fulfills, fills my bucket so much. So I think everyone needs to find the thing for themselves that does it. Yeah. And don't think it has to look a certain way. Because that's, I think, a big thing that's happened with self-care branding. Self-care TM has turned into self-care has to look like something that, shocker of all shockers, results in somebody making money.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I was going to say. It's we need to really talk about what self-care really is. And for me, self-care doesn't always necessitate the spending of money. It doesn't always necessitate some kind of commercial exchange, right? I think the biggest acts of self-care that you can do for yourself is engaging in things that are aligned with your values, because that's what's going to make you feel you see yourself, you're nurturing those things about you. And so this podcast, like you said, spending time with your son, gardening for me, it's physically exhausting, but it's so aligned with my values, with who I am, that it feels really nurturing, And so obviously there's a trade-off there, that you have to consider, but whatever it is for you, find out what those values are, and what are the activities, what are the things that you can do, the people that you can engage with that are going to feel like those values are being put to use, being acted upon. And that's what's going to make you feel like you're nurturing yourself in the most holistic and precious of ways, I think.
Yeah, because to me, it feels like it's the things that make you remember you have a body, you are a person, you exist. There is a you outside of all of anything else. Outside, no matter who receives it, appreciates it, validates it, whatever, that it allows you to remember, that's right, I am whole, I am worthy, I am loved, all from myself. And so whatever gets you to that, I think, is so beautiful. And for some people, work can do that, at least portions of your work. And that's okay, I think, as long as it's doing that and not draining you, depleting you, making you feel bad about yourself, making you judge yourself. It's that, to me, self-care is the stuff that feels expansive. Do your shoulders go back and down when you're doing that thing? Do you feel yourself exhale and breathe out and feel lighter? Or are you feeling that tension and the rolling in on yourself and getting smaller? That, to me, is always a really good, again, going back to that somatic part of this, is watching for those things to know, is what I'm doing right now really in service of me, my truth, and what I need, or not, right? And so doing things like volunteering where it's not about you can still be that, if it gets you back to that something that you really value, that you care about, that lets you feel that oh yeah, here I am again. This is how I want to show up in the world. That, to me, is what self-care looks like. It is not but by the way, sometimes it does involve money, and it can involve money, right? I go to a hotel once a quarter for 2 nights by myself, and that is by far for self-care, because it gets me to remember who I am without my family, without any responsibility, just that's right. Here's Becky. She gets to have this spaciousness and this quiet and this solitude that she craves. And I'm giving it to her. Right. And like, it helps me feel that. And it costs me money to get that hotel. So it's not free. And I'm using points and things to try and help with that. But that it can cost money, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't have to. Exactly. It doesn't have to. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. You have to figure out what that looks like for yourself, right? It can't
And I
be
think a lot of us don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's many people who are so out of touch with that they don't really even know anymore what brings them joy, what makes them feel like themselves. And then when you add in the heaviness of the world, it can be even harder to access or find those things like you were talking about, right? And so that is a challenge. And so like, it's like, can you find a small thing today instead of the expectation that you have to do it all today? Like, I love that. Like, I think a lot of the things we talked about can add up to, so what next? Well, like, can you release the expectations on all of it? On what you need to do, what you should be doing, what it has to look like, and just ask yourself, like, what's one thing, no matter how small, that I could do today or right now that would make me feel more like me? And that could be the smallest thing.
Yeah. And I actually have like a values guide.
Oh, great. We can link to that.
So we'll link it in the show notes. It's a free guide that was part of like my email list sign up thing. So we'll link that in the show notes, and it'll take you through some like journaling prompts and exercises to figure out what those things are that are integral to who you are as a person. So that way you can take action on those things and figure out how to align your life to focus in on those things.
Yeah. You had mentioned earlier about things that we had said we were going to do and checking in on those. Do you have any recollection of any of those things? Because I'm like, I don't know, other than I know like mutual aid things we've talked about. But was there anything specific that you know?
There are two things for sure. So one is I did end up getting a library card here at the local library.
Yay!
Yeah. Of course,
we love the library.
I've just been reading fanfic online since that, but I have the library card. So whenever I want to, I can go, or like, reserve books online, etc. So I'm excited about that. The library was gorgeous. So beautiful.
Nice.
And then the other thing is our mutual aid community circle is going really well. We have like bins of just like extra like supplies and like staples and things like that we've been storing up in case anybody needs it. And so that's going well. So I'm thankful for that.
I don't remember any of the things I said I would do. So who knows if I did them, because that's how my brain works. And I'm going to give myself grace about that and say, I don't know. But I do know that I've been having lots of conversations with my child about a lot of things, and that feels really good. And I am using Libby. And so highly recommend for your library card. If you like audiobooks, I am burning through books. I have read 15 books in April.
Wow.
Which is wild for me, because that is not normally how I show up in the world. And it's just been amazing to have done that. Like, well, I'm on my 15th. I don't think I'll quite finish it tonight. So 14 fully completed books. One did not finish, which was Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. And I 10 out of 10 do not recommend that book because I had heard so many good things, but it glorifies violence and abuse, in my opinion. So I was out in 2 chapters. I'm like, no. But anyway, so I don't know what I said I would do. Hopefully I've been doing it. I feel like right now what I'm doing more than anything is just trying to listen to my body, give it the care it needs so that I can stay out of the funk I was in, as I have well documented here, because I'm feeling myself very much come out of it, which is great. Like, I have finally, like, as you may see, I'm sitting at my desk instead of in my recliner as I was doing for the first 4 months of the year. I'm now finally like sitting back at my desk. I'm having more energy. I'm talking as fast as I used to, which is maybe not good, but how I naturally show up. And so I'm feeling much more myself. And so I think right now my goal is like, can I maintain this and do what I need? Continue to listen to my body so that I can give it what it needs, so that I don't fall, regress backwards. Because I am like, the seasons are changing. I need to get into a place of allowing myself more joy, because I fully recognized in March, I'm like, this is unsustainable to stay in this pit of despair for the next 4 years or whatever. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that for my family. I can't do that for myself. I can't, it doesn't work. So figuring out how am I going to navigate the years ahead in a way that allows me to be aware, allows me to feel like I am taking action where I can, but also allows me to protect myself. And that's my sanity, my health, my peace. that's the piece that's needing the work right now.
Yeah. 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 So in summary, today's episode, manage expectations, right? Self-manage expectations, give yourself grace. And what's the next small step, right? Like what's the small thing that you can do? Not the big thing, not the end goal, but what's the small thing that you can do to get some self-care, tap into joy and pleasure, right? Maybe it's, if you don't have a doctor, maybe it's researching doctors or calling your insurance company to see what's covered. Or maybe it's, if you have a doctor, but you haven't been in a while, maybe it's just looking at your calendar to see when you have availability before even making the phone call, right? Maybe it's taking a walk outside. Maybe it's some self-love and having an orgasm.
Sending a text to one friend, getting that library card, whatever the thing is for you. I feel like the episode we did 2 weeks ago about small actions that you can take of like resistance, I think some of that was inwardly focused, but I feel like a lot of it was outward focused, external things, actions you can be doing, like around building community, mutual aid, that kind of things. I feel like this is more about, it's almost step one before you get to that, which is the internal piece first. Because if you're not at capacity, if you don't have enough energy, if you're not resourced enough internally to do those external things, there's no point in those things.
Yeah.
Don't do those. Yeah. You will just continue to burn yourself out. So I feel like listen to this first and then go back. And then once you feel resourced, okay, then how do I start to think about external actions at this time? But I think keep coming back to this advice, this episode on like whenever you're starting to feel that overwhelm and that burnout by the world, because it's not, I mean, we have more time ahead of us. And so we need to keep, and I'm going to need to keep coming back to this because we have to do, like, it's the old trite oxygen mask for yourself first. We've got to do that. Like it's, they say it for a reason.
Yeah. 100%. Thank you for this conversation.
Well, thank you as always for these conversations, because again, they actually like fill my bucket and I always feel more energized afterwards. So thank you. Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Will you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen?
I know people say that all the time. And if you're like me, often you just go on to the next podcast. But truly, taking that moment to do that will really help us reach a wider audience.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.